Dr. Lisa Grant walked through the huge glass doors of the Galactic Council building. Her hands were shaking a little as she held her access card. Today was the day she would look at files that no human had ever seen before. The files contained the history of every smart species in the galaxy. Lisa was the first human to become a xenarchaeologist. This meant she studied the ancient past of alien species. It was a big job, and she felt the weight of it on her shoulders. The other species in the galaxy had been watching Earth closely since humans joined the galactic community 50 years ago. The archive room was massive. Crystal walls stretched up so high that Lisa could not see the ceiling. Blue lights danced inside the crystals, showing information from thousands of worlds. Lisa touched a control panel, and a holographic screen appeared in front of her. She started with the Zentari, a species known for their amazing biotechnology. The screen showed their history going back millions of years. Lisa watched as primitive Zentari slowly developed tools, then basic shelters, then more complex technology. But something was missing. She scrolled through thousands of years of Zentari development, but she could not find any early use of fire. This was strange. On Earth, humans had been using fire since they lived in caves. Lisa thought maybe the Zentari were different. She moved on to the next species. The Korthax were famous for their ability to control quantum energy. Lisa expected to see fire use in their early history, but again, she found nothing. The primitive Korthax had gone straight from simple stone tools to energy manipulation. They had completely skipped fire. Dr. Peter Stone entered the archive room, just as Lisa was starting to panic. Peter was an expert in how different species developed over time. He had worked with Lisa on many projects before, and she trusted his judgment. "Peter, you need to see this," Lisa said, her voice tight with excitement and worry. Peter walked over to her workstation. Lisa showed him what she had found. Together, they looked at species after species. The peaceful Villani with their telepathic abilities, the warrior Draconians with their advanced weapons, the mysterious ethereals with their energy forms. Every single species showed the same pattern. None of them had mastered fire during their primitive cave-dwelling phase. "This can't be right," Peter said, adjusting his glasses. "Fire is such a basic technology. Every species must have used it early in their development, but the evidence was clear. Species after species had developed in the same way. They started with simple tools, then moved to more complex technologies, and only much later did they learn to control fire. Some species, like the Korthax, had never used fire at all." Lisa pulled up the human development timeline. The difference was shocking. While other species were still learning to make basic stone tools, early humans were already using controlled fire for cooking, warmth, and protection. The timeline showed fire use going back almost 2 million years. "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to a section of the human timeline. "Our ancestors were using fire when they were barely recognizable. As human, they were maintaining fires, carrying burning materials from place to place, even doing basic metalwork." Peter stared at the screen in amazement. "No other species did this?" "Not one," Lisa replied. "And look at what happened next." She showed Peter how human development had accelerated after fire mastery. Brain size increased. Social structures became more complex. Technology advanced at a rate that had never been seen before in galactic history. "Fire changed everything for humans," Lisa said. "It gave them advantages that no other species had. They could cook their food, which gave them more energy. They could live in colder climates. They could work metal and create better tools." Peter was quiet for a long moment. "Do you realize what this means?" Lisa nodded. "It means humans are unique in the galaxy. We're the only species that mastered fire so early. We're the only species that developed this way. The implications were enormous. If humans had such a unique evolutionary advantage, it would explain many things. It would explain why humans had adapted so quickly to galactic technology. It would explain why human innovations had been so successful. It would explain why other species sometimes seemed puzzled by human behavior, but it also raised questions. Why had humans alone developed fire mastery so early? What had driven them to control this dangerous but useful force? And most importantly, what did this mean for humanity's place in the galactic community? Lisa knew she needed to report her findings, but she also knew how shocking they would be. The idea that humans possessed a unique evolutionary advantage would be difficult for other species to accept. Some might see it as a threat. "We need to verify this," Peter said. "We need to check every piece of data, every timeline, every species." "Record," Lisa agreed. They spent the next several hours going through the files again. They checked their work 3 times. They looked for any evidence that might contradict their findings. But the results were always the same. Humans were unique. They had mastered fire earlier than any other species in the galaxy. By hundreds of thousands of years. As the day ended, Lisa sat back in her chair and looked at the crystal walls around her. Somewhere in those crystals was the history of countless worlds, countless species, countless civilizations. But none of them had a story like humanity's. She thought about her ancestors, living in caves, learning to control fire. They had no idea that their simple discovery would one day make their descendants unique in a galaxy full of intelligent life. They had just been trying to survive, to stay warm, to cook their food. But their mastery of fire had changed everything. It had set humanity on a path that no other species had followed. It had made them who they were. Now Lisa had to figure out what to do with this knowledge. She had to decide how to tell the galaxy that humans were not just another species trying to fit in. They were something unprecedented, something that had never been seen before. The discovery would change everything. Lisa just hoped it would change things for the better. Dr. Helen Carter read Lisa's report 3 times before she believed it. As the chief evolutionary biologist for the Galactic Council, Helen had seen many strange discoveries. But this one was different. This one could change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. "Are you absolutely certain about these findings?" Helen asked Lisa during their video call. Her green eyes were serious behind her thick glasses. "Peter and I have checked everything multiple times," Lisa replied. "We've gone through the records of 47 different species. None of them mastered fire during the primitive phase. Humans are completely unique." Helen was quiet for a moment. She had been studying evolution for 30 years, and she had never seen anything like this. "I'm calling for a full investigation. We need experts from every major species to verify your work." Within a week, the investigation team was assembled. Dr. Zex Thul arrived from the Zentari homeworld, bringing advanced genetic analysis equipment. The Zentari looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. Zexthul was considered one of the best genetic scientists in the galaxy. Engineer Korthvac came from the Korthax Quantum Research Station. The Korthax were a fascinating species that looked like living crystals. They could manipulate quantum energy with their minds, but they had never learned to make a simple fire. Korthvac brought quantum archaeological tools that could see through time itself. The Velani sent a representative they called Whisper. The Velani were peaceful telepaths who rarely left their homeworld. Whisper looked almost human, but her silver hair moved like it was underwater, and her eyes glowed with a soft blue light. She could read thoughts and emotions, which made her perfect for detecting any lies or mistakes. Captain Ben Walsh was chosen to lead the expedition to Earth. Ben was a skilled pilot and explorer who had been to more worlds than most humans would visit in 10 lifetimes. His job was to take the team to Earth's oldest archaeological sites to verify Lisa's claims. The research ship, Aurora, was loaded with the most advanced scanning equipment in the galaxy. The team could examine ancient sites without disturbing them, looking through layers of rock and soil to see what had happened millions of years ago. Their first stop was Africa, where the oldest evidence of human fire use was supposed to be found. The team descended into caves that had been sealed since humans left Earth for the stars. The air was thick and dusty, and their lights cast strange shadows on the cave walls. "Beginning quantum archaeological scan," Korthvac announced. The crystal being placed several devices around the cave entrance. Blue energy flowed between the devices, creating a field that could see through time. What they found amazed everyone. The quantum scan showed layer after layer of human activity going back almost 2 million years. In the deepest layers, the team could see evidence of controlled fires, cooking areas, and even primitive forges. "This is impossible," Zexthul whispered, studying the genetic data from the scans. These humans were barely developed, yet they were using fire in complex ways. Whisper floated closer to the cave wall, her telepathic abilities allowing her to sense emotions and thoughts from the past. "There is great intelligence here," she said in her musical voice. "These early humans were not just using fire. They were thinking about fire, planning with fire, dreaming about fire." Dr. Amy Foster, a specialist in early human technology, made the most important discovery. Deep in the cave system, she found evidence of something incredible. The early humans had not just been using fire randomly. They had been cultivating it, maintaining it, and carrying it from place to place. "Look at this," Amy said, pointing to a section of the cave wall. The quantum scan showed a series of carefully maintained fire pits. These humans were keeping fires burning for months, maybe even years. They were treating fire like a living thing that needed care. The team spent weeks examining site after site. Every location showed the same pattern. Humans had been master of fire from the very beginning of their development. They had used it in ways that no other species had ever imagined. But the most shocking discovery came when they compared the human timeline to other species. While humans were mastering fire, other species at the same developmental stage were still struggling with basic stone tools. The humans had been ahead by hundreds of thousands of years. "Do you understand what this means?" Peter asked the team. During one of their evening meetings, fire gave humans advantages that compounded over time. Better nutrition from cooked food led to bigger brains. Bigger brains led to better planning. Better planning led to more sophisticated fire use. Zexthul was fascinated by the genetic implications. The human brain developed differently because of fire. The areas responsible for planning, cooperation, and tool use grew larger than in any other species we know. Korthvac was amazed by the technological aspects. Humans were doing metallurgy when other species were still learning to chip rocks. They were working with metal while living in caves. Whisper was most interested in the social aspects. Fire brought humans together. They gathered around fires to share food, tell stories, and plan hunts. Fire created human society. As the investigation continued, the evidence became overwhelming. There was no doubt that humans had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had mastered fire earlier and more completely than any other known species, but the discovery raised new questions. Why had humans alone developed this way? What had driven them to control fire when other species had not? And what other advantages might this early mastery have given them? The team spent months documenting their findings. Every piece of evidence was checked and rechecked. Every analysis was verified by multiple experts. They could not allow any mistakes in something this important. Finally, Captain Ben Walsh called a meeting to discuss their conclusions. The team gathered in the Aurora's main conference room, looking out at the stars through the ship's large windows. "We've verified Dr. Grant's findings," Ben announced. "Humans are unique in the galaxy. They mastered fire earlier than any other species, and this mastery gave them advantages that no other species has ever possessed." The implications were staggering. If humans had such a unique evolutionary background, it would explain many things about their behavior and capabilities. It would also raise questions about their place in galactic civilization. "We need to present these findings to the Galactic Council," Helen said. "But we also need to be prepared for the consequences. Some species might not react well to learning." "That humans are so different," Lisa nodded. She had started this investigation to satisfy her scientific curiosity. Now she realized that her discovery might change the fate of humanity in the galaxy. The simple fact that humans had learned to control fire in caves might determine whether they were accepted as equals or feared as something alien and dangerous. The team prepared their final report, knowing that it would be one of the most important documents in galactic history. The discovery of humanity's unique relationship with fire would echo through the stars for generations to come. The Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from every major species in the galaxy. News of the human fire discovery had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to hear the official report. The massive circular room buzzed with conversation. In dozens of different languages, Dr. Nick Gray stood at the center of the chamber, holding the final report. As a specialist in cognitive development, Nick had been studying how fire mastery had affected human brain evolution. His findings were about to shock the entire galactic community. "Distinguished members of the council," Nick began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "What we have discovered about human development is unprecedented in galactic history." The room fell silent. Representatives leaned forward in their seats, waiting to hear what the investigation had revealed. Humans did not just master fire earlier. And other species, Nick continued. Fire mastery fundamentally changed how humans evolved. It altered their brain development, their social structures, and their entire approach to problem solving. He activated a holographic display that showed the human brain compared to other species. The differences were remarkable. Certain areas of the human brain were much larger than in other species, particularly the regions responsible for planning, cooperation, and tool use. Cooking with fire allowed early humans to extract more nutrition from their food, Nick explained. This provided the energy needed for larger brain development. But the changes went beyond simple brain size. The hologram showed how human societies had developed around fire. Groups of early humans gathered around fires to share food, tell stories, and plan activities. This social interaction had driven the development of language, cooperation, and complex thinking. Fire was not just a tool for humans, Nick said. It was the foundation of their entire civilization. Senator Claire Brooks, representing Earth's interests, watched the reaction of the other council members. Some looked fascinated by the scientific discoveries. Others appeared worried or even frightened. The idea that humans had developed so differently from every other species was difficult for many to accept. Hi, Commander Draxel of the Draconian Empire was the first to speak. The Draconians were a proud warrior species with scales instead of skin and eyes that glowed like embers. Draxel's voice was deep and threatening. This report suggests that humans are fundamentally different from all other species, Draxel said. If they evolved so differently, how can we trust them to be part of our galactic community? Murmurs of agreement came from several representatives. The fear was understandable. If humans were truly unique, they might be unpredictable or dangerous. But Dr. Lisa Grant had a different perspective. She stood up to address the council, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Fire mastery did not make humans more dangerous, Lisa said. It made them more adaptable. The ability to control fire allowed humans to survive in many different environments. They spread across their entire planet, learning to live in deserts, forests, mountains, and frozen lands. She activated another hologram showing human expansion across Earth. The display showed how fire had allowed humans to survive in places where other species could not. This adaptability made humans natural explorers and innovators, Lisa continued. They learned to solve problems by thinking in new ways. They developed technologies that other species had never imagined. Senator Veltar of the Zentari Coalition raised a concern. The Zentari had always been cautious about new species joining the galactic community. But if humans are so different, how do we know they will follow the same moral and ethical standards as other species? Veltar asked. Dr. Peter Stone stepped forward to answer. He had been studying human ethics and morality as part of the investigation. Fire mastery actually encouraged the development of cooperation and empathy in humans, Peter explained. Maintaining fires required groups to work together. Sharing cooked food created bonds between individuals. The social aspects of fire use helped humans develop strong moral codes. Whisper, the Valani telepath, floated closer to the center of the chamber. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotions and thoughts of everyone present. The humans speak truth, Whisper said in her musical voice. Their development was different, but it was not dangerous. Fire taught them to care for something outside themselves. It taught them responsibility. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued that humans should be restricted until their full capabilities could be understood. Others suggested that humanity's unique perspective could benefit the entire galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, provided a military perspective. He had worked with many different species and had seen how human innovations had improved galactic defense systems. Human creativity has already benefited all of us, Jake said. Their different approach to problem solving has led to advances in technology, medicine, and engineering. We should embrace their uniqueness, not fear it. But the opposition was strong. Several species formed a coalition arguing that humans were too different to be trusted with full membership in galactic civilization. They pointed out that human history was filled with conflicts and wars, suggesting that their fire mastery had made them inherently violent. Dr. Amy Foster countered this argument with historical evidence. She showed how fire had actually reduced violence among early humans by making survival easier and encouraging cooperation. Fire gave humans alternatives to conflict, Amy explained. They could cook food instead of fighting over it. They could stay warm instead of competing for shelter. Fire made cooperation more beneficial than conflict. The debate reached a turning point when Elder Zephron of the ancient Ethereal Council spoke. The Ethereals were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and their wisdom was respected by all. In my long existence, I have seen many species join our community, Zephron said, his energy form pulsing with soft light. Each has brought something unique. The Zentari brought biotechnology. The Korthax brought quantum manipulation. The Velani brought telepathic understanding. The chamber fell silent as the ancient being continued. Humans bring the gift of fire mastery and all that it represents. They bring adaptability, creativity, and the ability to see solutions where others see only problems. This is not a threat to be feared, but a gift to be treasured. The elder's words carried great weight. Several representatives who had been opposed to human integration began to reconsider their positions. But the final argument came from an unexpected source. Dr. Zexthil of the Zentari stood up, his blue skin shimmering under the chamber's lights. I have studied human genetics extensively, Zexthil said. Their fire mastery has indeed made them unique. But uniqueness is not uniformity. If we only accept species that develop exactly like us, we limit the potential of our entire civilization. He paused, looking around the chamber at the diverse array of species represented. Humans have already proven their value to our community. Their innovations have saved lives, improved technologies, and solved problems that had plagued us for generations. We should not fear their differences. We should learn from them. The vote was close, but the Council ultimately decided to fully accept humanity's unique status. They established new protocols for studying and understanding human capabilities, but they also recognized that humanity's differences were strengths rather than weaknesses. Senator Claire Brooks felt relief wash over her as the vote was announced. Humanity would remain a full member of the galactic community, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The revelation of humanity's unique fire mastery would have consequences that would ripple through the galaxy for years to come. Some species would embrace the opportunities it created, while others would continue to resist. The discovery had changed everything. Humans were no longer just another species trying to fit into galactic civilization. They were pioneers whose ancient mastery of fire had prepared them for a unique role in the galaxy's future. As the council session ended, representatives began to leave the chamber. But many stopped to talk with the human delegation, asking questions about fire mastery and its implications. The fear was beginning to fade, replaced by curiosity and interest. The revelation was complete. Now came the hard work of figuring out what it all meant for the future of galactic civilization. 3 months after the Galactic Council's decision, Admiral Roy Spencer received a disturbing intelligence report. Several species were secretly meeting to discuss the human problem. The Draconian Empire was leading these meetings, and they were gaining support from other conservative species. Roy sat in his office aboard the space station Defender, reading through the classified documents. The resistance movement was more organized than anyone had expected. They called themselves the Galactic Purity Alliance, and their goal was simple: remove humans from the galactic community. "Sir, we have more reports coming in," said Lieutenant Colonel Dave Miller, Roy's intelligence officer. Dave had been monitoring alien communications for weeks, and the news was not good. "What are they saying now?" Roy asked, rubbing his tired eyes. "The Draconians are calling humanity a genetic mutation," Dave replied. "They say human fire mastery is unnatural and dangerous. They're convincing other species that humans will contaminate galactic civilization." Roy felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought in many battles, but this was different. This was not a war over territory or resources. This was a war over humanity's right to exist among the stars. Dr. V. Snar, a leading scientist from the Draconian Empire, had published a paper that was spreading throughout the galaxy. In it, he argued that human fire mastery was not an advancement, but a deviation from natural evolution. He claimed that humans had evolved incorrectly, and that their entire civilization was built on an unstable foundation. According to Vexnar, Dave continued, all properly evolved species follow the same development pattern: tool use, then shelter building, then agriculture, then fire mastery. Humans skipped steps and developed fire too early. He says this makes them unpredictable and dangerous. The paper was having a serious effect on galactic opinion. Species that had been neutral about human integration were beginning to have doubts. Some were even withdrawing from treaties with Earth, claiming they needed to reassess their relationships with humanity. Captain Jenny Lewis of the diplomatic vessel Harmony was working desperately to counter the growing anti-human sentiment. She had been traveling from world to world, meeting with leaders and trying to maintain the alliances that Earth had built over the past 50 years. "It's getting worse," Jenny reported during a video conference with Roy. "The Crystalline Collective just canceled their trade agreement with us. The Botanical Union is refusing to allow human researchers on their worlds. Even some of our oldest allies are becoming distant." Roy could see the exhaustion in Jenny's eyes. She had been working non-stop for weeks, trying to hold together humanity's place in the galaxy. "What's their main concern?" Roy asked. "They keep coming back to the same point," Jenny replied. "They say humans are too different, too unpredictable. They worry that human innovations will disrupt the balance of galactic civilization." The situation became critical when the Draconian Empire announced a blockade of human trade routes. They claimed that human goods were contaminated with the influence of aberrant development. Several major shipping companies stopped doing business with human colonies, leaving them isolated and struggling. The colony on New Terra was the first to suffer serious shortages. The planet could produce food and basic supplies, but it needed imported technology and medical supplies to survive. Within weeks, the colonists were facing a crisis. "We have enough food for maybe 6 months," reported Governor Lisa Park during an emergency meeting with Earth's leadership. "But if we don't get medical supplies soon, people are going to die." Similar reports came from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The blockade was not just an economic weapon. It was a threat to human survival. Dr. Lisa Grant watched the crisis unfold with growing frustration. Her scientific discovery had been meant to help humanity understand its place in the galaxy. Instead, it had created a conflict that threatened to destroy everything humans had built. "We need to prove that our differences are beneficial, not dangerous," Lisa told her research team. "We need to show other species that human fire mastery can help solve their problems, not create new ones." The opportunity came from an unexpected source. The Velani ice colonies were facing an energy crisis that threatened their survival. Their homeworld was entering a cold period that happened every few thousand years, and their traditional power sources were failing. The Velani had tried everything they could think of. Their telepathic abilities could not generate heat, and their peaceful nature made them reluctant to use more aggressive technologies. Thousands of Velani were at risk of freezing to death. "We need help," Whisper transmitted to Lisa during a desperate telepathic communication. "Our people are dying, and we do not know how to save them." Lisa realized this was the perfect opportunity to demonstrate the value of human fire mastery. She quickly assembled a team of experts in thermal dynamics and energy systems. Dr. Tony Martinez, a specialist in heating technology, agreed to lead the technical team. But getting to the Velani colonies would not be easy. The Draconian blockade was preventing human ships from traveling freely through the galaxy. Lisa would need to find a way to reach the Velani without triggering an incident. Captain Ben Walsh volunteered to pilot a small, fast ship through the blockade. The journey would be dangerous, but Ben was one of the best pilots in the human fleet. "I can get you there," Ben promised, "but we'll have to go through Draconian patrol zones. If they catch us, it could start a war." Lisa made the decision to go ahead with the mission. The Velani were dying, and human fire mastery might be the only thing that could save them. If the mission succeeded, it would prove that humanity's unique abilities were beneficial to the galaxy. The ship Pathfinder launched from Earth in secret, carrying Lisa's team and their equipment. They traveled through remote space lanes, avoiding the main shipping routes where Draconian patrols were. Strongest. The journey took 2 weeks, during which tension continued to build throughout the galaxy. More species were joining the Galactic Purity Alliance, and human colonies were becoming increasingly isolated. Some Earth leaders were beginning to wonder if humanity should withdraw from galactic civilization entirely. "Maybe we should just leave," suggested Defense Minister Robert Chun during a cabinet meeting. "If other species don't want us here, perhaps we should focus on developing our own worlds." But President Maria Santos refused to give up. "We belong here as much as any other species," she said firmly. "Our ancestors mastered fire to survive on Earth. We won't run away from the stars." Meanwhile, the Pathfinder was approaching the Velani colonies. The ice worlds were beautiful but deadly, covered in glaciers that reflected the light of distant stars. The Velani cities were built under the ice, connected by tunnels that provided protection from the cold, but the cities were failing. The Velani's biothermal generators could not produce enough heat to keep the colonies warm. The telepathic beings were huddled together in the deepest parts of their cities, trying to share their body heat. "We need to work fast," Tony Martinez told his team as they prepared to descend to the planet's surface. "The Velani don't have much time left." Lisa watched from the ship's bridge as her team began their work. Everything depended on whether they could adapt human fire mastery techniques to solve the Velani's energy crisis. If they failed, the Velani colonies would die, and humanity would be blamed for another disaster. But if they succeeded, it might prove that humanity's unique development was not a threat but a gift. The fate of human civilization in the galaxy might depend on their ability to use fire mastery to save an entire species. The resistance movement was growing stronger every day, but Lisa hoped that this mission would provide the proof that humanity needed. Fire had made humans unique, and now it might be the key to securing their place among the stars. The work began on the ice world below, while above, the galaxy watched and waited to see if humanity's ancient mastery of fire could save a dying civilization. Dr. Tony Martinez stood on the frozen surface of the Velani colony world, watching his team install the last of the heating systems. The work had taken 3 weeks, but the results were beyond anything they had hoped for. The modified human fire mastery techniques were not just keeping the Velani colonies warm. They were providing more energy than the cities had ever had before. "The thermal efficiency is incredible," Tony reported to Lisa over the communication system. "We're getting 97% energy conversion." The Velani biothermal generators were only managing 30%. Below the ice, the Velani cities were coming back to life. The temperature had risen to comfortable levels, and the telepathic beings were emerging from their emergency shelters. Children who had been too cold to play were running through the tunnels, their laughter echoing through the crystalline corridors. Whisper floated up to Tony, her silver hair moving like liquid in the warm air. "Your fire mastery has saved us," she said, her telepathic voice filled with gratitude. "We had forgotten that heat could be so gentle and efficient." The success of the Velani mission sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of the rescue spread quickly, and the reaction was immediate. Species that had been supporting the Galactic Purity Alliance began to question their position. Admiral Roy Spencer received reports of the changing attitudes from intelligence officers throughout the galaxy. "The Crystalline Collective is reconsidering their position," reported Lieutenant Colonel Dave Miller. "They're saying that maybe human fire mastery could help solve their energy distribution problems." Similar reports came from other species. The Botanical Union wanted to know if human heating techniques could help their greenhouse worlds. The Aquatic Federation was interested in thermal regulation for their underwater cities. Even the proud Korthax were quietly asking about human metallurgy techniques. Captain Ben Walsh was promoted to admiral and given command of the new interspecies cooperation fleet. His job was to oversee the transportation of human experts and equipment to worlds throughout the galaxy. The demand for human assistance was so great that Earth had to establish a special academy to train more fire mastery specialists. That Dr. Amy Foster became the head of the new academy, teaching students from dozens of different species. The classrooms were filled with Zentari learning thermal dynamics, Korthax studying metallurgy, and Velani practicing energy management. It was the most diverse educational environment the galaxy had ever seen. "Fire mastery is not just about technology," Amy told her students during one of her lectures. "It's about understanding that sometimes the most powerful force can also be the most nurturing. Fire can destroy, but it can also create, warm, and heal." The Academy's most popular course was taught by Dr. Tony Martinez who had led the successful Galani rescue mission. His class on practical thermal engineering was always full, with waiting lists that stretched for months. But perhaps the most significant change was in how humanity saw itself. The discovery of their unique evolutionary path had given them a new sense of purpose and identity. They were no longer just trying to fit into galactic civilization. They were helping to shape its future. Admiral Roy Spencer, now in charge of galactic defense coordination, worked with species throughout the galaxy to improve their military technologies. Human fire mastery principles were being applied to everything from ship engines to weapon systems to life support systems. Humans have taught us that being different is not a weakness, said Commander Veltara of the Zentari Defense Force. Their unique perspective has made all of our fleets stronger and more efficient. The joint research facilities were producing breakthrough discoveries almost weekly. On the Korthax homeworld, human metallurgy combined with quantum manipulation had created materials stronger than anything previously known. On the Zentari research stations, human thermal management was revolutionizing biotechnology. Dr. Vexnar, the draconian scientist who had originally opposed human integration, published a new paper apologizing for his previous work. "I was wrong to fear human uniqueness," he wrote. "Their fire mastery has shown us that evolution can take many paths, and each path can lead to valuable discoveries." The paper was widely read throughout the galaxy and helped to heal the remaining divisions between species. Vexanar even applied to study at the Human Fire Mastery Academy, becoming one of its most dedicated students. Captain Jenny Lewis was appointed as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council, a new position created to recognize humanity's special role in galactic civilization. Her job was to coordinate human assistance efforts and ensure that fire mastery knowledge was shared fairly among all species. "Every species brings something unique to our galactic community," Jenny said during her inaugural address. "Humans bring the legacy of fire mastery, but we also bring the lesson that differences should be celebrated, not feared." The transformation was so complete that within a year, it was hard to remember the fear and suspicion that had once surrounded humanity. Human colonies that had been blockaded and isolated were now thriving centers of interspecies cooperation. The trade routes that had been cut off were reopened and busier than ever. Dr. Lisa Grant often returned to the Crystal Archives, where she had first made her discovery. The same holographic displays that had once shown humanity's isolation now showed their integration into a galaxy-wide network of cooperation and shared knowledge. "Look how far we've come," Dr. Peter Stone said during one of their visits to the archives. "A year ago, we were worried that our uniqueness would make us outcasts. Now it's made us teachers and leaders." Lisa nodded, but she was thinking about something deeper. The real lesson of the fire mastery discovery was not about technology or evolution. It was about the power of diversity and the importance of embracing differences rather than fearing them. The establishment of the first Interspecies Fire Mastery Academy on Earth marked the final step in humanity's integration into galactic civilization. Students from across the galaxy came to study in the caves where fire mastery had first begun, learning not just techniques, but the deeper principles of adaptation and innovation. Elder Zephron of the Ethereal Council attended the Academy's opening ceremony, his ancient energy form pulsing with approval. "In my long existence, I have seen many species rise and fall," he said, "but I have never seen a species use their uniqueness to lift up others as humans have done." The ceremony was held in the same African cave system where Dr. Amy Foster had first found evidence of fire cultivation. The caves had been converted into a museum and learning center, but they still retained their ancient atmosphere. Captain Ben Walsh, now Fleet Admiral, stood in the main cave looking at the primitive fire pits that had been preserved in crystal cases. Our ancestors had no idea that their simple fires would one day light the way for an entire galaxy. He said to the assembled crowd, the Academy's first graduating class was a remarkable sight. Beings from dozens of species stood together, each having learned not just human fire mastery techniques, but the human approach to problem-solving and cooperation. They would return to their homeworlds as ambassadors of a new way of thinking. As the ceremony ended and the graduates prepared to leave Earth, Dr. Lisa Grant felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Her scientific discovery had changed the galaxy in ways she had never imagined. But more importantly, it had shown that being different was not something to hide or apologize for. Humanity's ancient mastery of fire had done more than give them technological advantages. It had prepared them to be bridges between species, teachers who could show others that diversity was strength. The caves where it all began had become symbols of hope for a galaxy, learning to celebrate rather than fear its differences. The stars above Earth shone brighter than ever, illuminated not just by distant suns, but by the fires of cooperation and understanding that humans had helped kindle throughout the galaxy. The species that had mastered fire in caves had become the teachers lighting the way to a future where all beings could thrive together. And in the depths of space, new colonies were being built using principles learned from humanity's ancient relationship with fire. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges yet to be overcome. But thanks to the lessons of fire mastery, those challenges would be faced together, with the combined strength of all species working as one. Jenny Lewis found her diplomatic mission suddenly much easier. Instead of defending humanity's right to exist in the galaxy, she was fielding requests for human expertise and assistance. "I can't keep up with all the requests," Jenny told Roy during their weekly briefing. "Everyone wants to know how human fire mastery can help solve their problems." Dr. Lisa Grant was overwhelmed by the response. Her communication system was flooded with messages from scientists, engineers, and government officials across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to learn about human fire mastery and how it could be applied to their specific challenges. "We need to be careful," Lisa warned her team. "This interest is wonderful, but we need to make sure we're sharing our knowledge responsibly." The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the new situation. The chamber was packed again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of fear and suspicion, there was excitement and curiosity. High Commander Draxol,